Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com and the Big Four Accounting Firms YouTube channel. Before we get started, just wanted to remind everybody to support us if you have a chance or if you can. Even $1 helps, and we have a link in the description to a website called Buy Me a Coffee. It's just a way to donate to us and support us. Again, any amount is helpful so that we can keep putting out content. And there's also other ways for you to support us in the show notes to this podcast or on YouTube in the description. In today's podcast, I wanted to talk about some news from KPMG. It was recently released that one of their partners, David Britt, was sentenced in a case related to KPMG fraud and PCAOB. And what happened was that KPMG's audit leadership in the US tried to enhance some of their audits so they wouldn't look as bad when the PCAOB came in, because they had multiple people that used to work for the PCAOB, and those people got word that the PCAOB was going to investigate them, and they tried to clean up the files. And this David Britt partner out of KPMG was the last partner to be sentenced, and he's going to be sentenced to home confinement for 6 months. And he's also going to be deported because he's originally from Australia, so he can do his time in Australia. I'm not really sure how they're going to enforce that, but that was his sentence. And Britt, he was the co-leader of the Banking and Capital Markets Group for KPMG, and he pled guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud. And he could have received a much longer sentence, and he could have actually gone to prison, but he was lucky that he did not go to prison. However, there were other KPMGers involved, like I said before, and some of them did end up serving jail time, and that was then the sentencing for that happened last year. One of them was David Middendorf, and he was the former national managing partner for audit quality and professional practice at KPMG, and he got a year in jail, and he could have received actually a lot more time, like almost 5 years, but he got pretty lucky. And it was because it wasn't really a scheme to steal money. They got convicted of wire fraud, but they didn't really actually line their own pockets. They just tried to help their KPMG out, and it really didn't end up going well for any of them. And it's actually pretty amazing that they got jail time, that some of them did get jail time. Obviously, the latest guy did not, but it's pretty amazing because a lot of these white-collar crimes, they plead guilty and they get things like home confinement. But this is actually a pretty huge scandal if you think about it. And the reason the partners do it is because they think it's a victimless crime, right? It's not even the 10K itself. It's the review of the work that they did on the 10K, because the PCAOB is coming in and reviewing your audit. But KPMG was having a lot of issues with their audits, and so they were trying to get their numbers up. And all of these partners were in high levels of leadership. One guy was in charge of banking capital markets. Another one was audit quality. They were literally the leadership of the firm and the leadership of the audit part of the firm and audit quality. So it's the top of the top. And so they have to send a message. But not only that, it shows the problems with KPMG, because KPMG has this scandal. They also had a scandal where they were cheating on their internal training. And the problem with this is it erodes confidence. But also, we don't know how well the work KPMG is doing over 10Ks. And people expect that the audit firms are actually reviewing and auditing the 10Ks and auditing the information that goes on the 10Ks. And all this does is stab shareholders in the back, because if a firm does go down the drain, then people relied on the audit statements. And if KPMG is not actually doing the work, and the only work they're doing is covering up the fact that they don't do the work, then that's not good for anybody. So they need to send a message. And it's obvious they need to send a big message to KPMG, because many of the people there are not doing good things. So I think in this case, it was important for them to give jail time to some of them. Obviously, this latest guy did not get jail time, but the other ones, they did deserve the jail time because they're eroding the public's confidence. And people can say all they want that this is just an isolated case, but it's not. KPMG has instances of this. And not only that, it's the top of the leadership at KPMG that was involved in this. So it is important to give jail time to these people and to continue to give jail time to these people. But there's also lessons to be learned here. And one of those biggest lessons is don't think short term. A lot of partners, even though they have these long careers, are short term, and they're always looking for short term wins, short term billing goal wins. They're trying to cut corners on things like this. But when you're thinking of your career, you can't go that route, because yeah, you might get away with covering something up. You might get away with cutting an ethical corner. You might get away with cheating on your CPE tests. But overall, over the long term, all that's going to do is eat away at your reputation. And think about this guy, David Middendorf, not the David Britt guy that we talked about that just got home confinement, because he basically got away clean on this, even though he has to go back to Australia. But this one guy that had to do a year of time in jail. Yeah, you trying to cover your tracks and trying to do the unethical thing seems easy. And it's a way to get rid of the problem immediately in front of you. But over the long term, you've just destroyed your own career. You've hurt your family because you're not going to be earning money, and you have to go to jail. And all of that goes on your record, and it's going to be nearly impossible for you to get a professional job ever again, because who could ever trust you ethically? Nobody. So that's another lesson, is how important ethics are. And one of the ways to look at ethics is think of the long term. Because there's going to be a lot of times in the Big Four where unethical things are in front of your face. Trust me, it's not just in the Big Four accounting firms, it's in accounting in general. You're going to have a lot of these ethical questions because you can just book an entry to plug something. When you get an accounting, plug is a word you hear everywhere. You plug it in a spreadsheet, plug the financial statements. It sounds bad, and a lot of the times it is bad, but sometimes it's just rounding up. But you get presented with ethical situations. And if you're just thinking short term, you're going to do some not so good things in your career. You need to be thinking about that now, and you need to be thinking about that in the future. And whenever you look at these ethical concerns in your career, when you're confronted by them, you need to remember that it might pay off in the short term. But in the long term, is it worth your career? Is it worth your freedom? I don't think so. And some of the leaders of the Big Four accounting firms didn't even think this way. So you need to think about this now, and think about it as you move throughout your career. But also, the more that KPMG and other firms like this do bad things like this, the bigger chance we have of another Big Four accounting firm going under. Similar to what happened in Enron with Arthur Andersen. Now, there were some actual crazy circumstances with Arthur Andersen and Enron that the prosecutors there kind of wanted to do Arthur Andersen in. But if these accounting firms keep on doing damage to their reputation, then regulators will want to break them up, like they're doing in the UK. So you need to look out for yourself, but you also need to look out for the companies you're working for and the accounting firms you're working for, so that you don't destroy their reputation. But overall, you just need to look out for yourself and be ethical and think long term. So that's the update for today. To get future updates, subscribe to this podcast. And we'd really appreciate it if you could financially support us through the Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. But if you can't, subscribe to our YouTube channel and like this video on the YouTube channel. Thanks for listening.